So what we're going to focus on are the kings and the prophets of Judah and Israel. The kings and the prophets of Judah and Israel. So if you look at your notes, you'll see that there are 4 different columns for you to take a look at. There are some blank columns on the far left and the far right. That is to identify the different prophets who are connected to the kings that we'll be talking about, and also to identify family changes or dynasty changes within these different kingdoms. So what we'll do is we'll just go through and I'll tell you which king we're talking about and whether that king is a king of Judah or a king of Israel, so that way you can see and you can identify where we're at in this process. And then I'll also let you know if there are prophets connected to these particular kings, as well as family changes. So let's go ahead and get started. So last week we talked a little bit about Rehoboam and Jeroboam. So Rehoboam is the first king of Judah. So Rehoboam is on the king of Judah side, and Jeroboam is on the kings of Israel side. So with Rehoboam, as we talked about last week, he completely alienated the northern tribes, and so they revolted against him. If you remember from last week, he said that my pinky finger is bigger than my father's loin. So he was actually threatening them with more work and more things to do. And so because of that, the northern tribes revolted. And Jeroboam became their king. So that's the kings of Israel side. But back to Rehoboam and the king of Judah. So the southern kingdom of Judah, they maintained access to the temple and also to Jerusalem. Whereas Jeroboam, they revolted, and he is the one who set up the 2 different shrines, one in Dan and one in Bethel, for the people to go worship. He changed the worship calendar around such that people were worshiping on days that God had not asked for, that God had not deemed to be appropriate. And in addition to that, he inaugurated, or he installed, you could say, non-Levitical priests. So that was a big no-no. So this is essentially a map of what the divided kingdom looks like. So we have the northern kingdom of Israel in the purple and the southern kingdom of Judah in the green. So we are going to come back to this map, but I want to show you where we're going with this. So this right here is a map of the Assyrian Empire, the Assyrian Empire. So everything that is green, that is all connected to the Assyrian Empire. And what I want for you to take notice of is that with this little red box over on the left by the Mediterranean Sea, this is where Israel and Judah are. If you go south of where Judah is, just south of the Mediterranean Sea, where you see the city Memphis, that is where Egypt is. Okay, if you go just north of where Israel is, that is where Aram is. That's where Syria is. And then if you go further to the east, that's where Nineveh is, and Nineveh is actually the capital of Assyria. So if you look at this map and you see the word Assyria, Nineveh is the 3rd city just north of that word, Assyria. So Nineveh is the capital of that city. And what we're going to find throughout this divided kingdom is that because of the location where Israel and Judah are, that is a prime location because of the access to the Mediterranean Sea, because of access to modern day Europe, access to Egypt, and also access to the Middle East. So there's going to be a lot of fighting, there's going to be a lot of war going on, and a lot of that is over the territory itself, but there are some other things going on too that we'll talk about. So anyway, this is where we're heading with things. But let's go ahead and go back to this map of the divided kingdom. So we've talked about Rehoboam on the kings of Judah side and Jeroboam on the kings of Israel side. That takes us to Abijam on the kings of Judah side. The kings of Judah side. He is Rehoboam's son. and he reigns for about 2 years, and that's really all that's said about him. The king listed after him, Asa, on the kings of Judah side. He was very active in religious and civil reform. So that was very important to him. He ruled peacefully for about 40 years, which that's a long time to rule peacefully in this time period, especially considering the location of where Judah and Israel are. That is pretty huge to have 40 years of peace. So, but one of the things that he does is that he removes the male cult prostitutes. So we do have some worshiping of other gods and goddesses going on, and included in that would be what we might call sacred prostitution or cult prostitution, where people prostitute their bodies in the name of a god or goddess. And so Asa is focused on removing that from the southern kingdom of Judah. He also gets rid of idols. Any Asherah images. We talked about the worship of Asherah in regards to Judges, the fertility goddess of the Canaanites. So Asherah images are there, so he burns those. And he also brings treasure into the temple. So there were a lot of really good things that King Asa did to help people come back into a strong relationship with God. Now, if we go over to the kings of Israel side, you'll see Nadab, and he was Jeroboam's son, and he was murdered by Baasha after a reign of less than 2 full years. So he didn't rule for very long, and he was killed by someone else outside of his family. So that takes us to Baasha on the kings of Israel side. Next to Baasha, you can put the words family change. So in that far right column, go ahead and write family change there. So Baasha is not connected to Jeroboam. He is not a descendant of Jeroboam. He is from a different family. So Baasha basically goes in and kills everyone connected to Jeroboam. He does evil in the eyes of the Lord, and he also follows after the sins of Jeroboam. So remember, Jeroboam, he's the one who established different places of worship, put idols in those places of worship, commanded that the people go to those places to worship rather than going to Jerusalem. He changed the purpose and function and the dates of holy days and festivals, and he also appointed non-Levitical priests. So there are a lot of things that he did that set the northern kingdom of Israel up for failure. So Baasha continues on with those things. That takes us to Elah or Elah. So he is the son of Baasha, and he does evil in the eyes of the Lord and follows after the sins of his father. We're going to see a lot of these different kings doing evil in the eyes of the Lord and following after the sins of their father. So that is Elah. That takes us down to Zimri on the kings of Israel side. Zimri. He is a commander of Elah's army, and so he assassinates Elah or Elah. He kills everyone connected to Baasha's house, and then he later commits suicide in his house. So Zimri institutes a family change. So he is not a descendant of Baasha, and so because of that, there's a family change with him. So next to Zimri on the far right column, go ahead and put family change there. That takes us to Omri on the kings of Israel side. Omri on the kings of Israel side. So he also was a commander in the army, and then he became king. So there is another family change. So next to Omri on the far right column, go ahead and write family change. So Omri begins as a commander in the army, and he becomes king, and 3 of his descendants become king after him. This is a big deal. This is actually the longest dynasty, you could say, or the most descendants of one person that serves as king. So this is a big deal for the northern kingdom of Israel. So Omri, his son is Ahab, and we're actually going to talk about Ahab, Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, Ahaziah, on both sides. So there's Ahaziah on the kings of Israel side, Ahaziah or Jehoahaz on the kings of Judah side, and also Jehoram and Jehu and Athaliah. So this whole section it is really to put it nicely, a family mess. A huge family mess. I believe that you have most of these notes already written down for you, so I just want to basically talk through what's happening here with these two families, and also with the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. Before we do that, if you go to the Kings of Israel side, if you look next to Ahaziah, who reigns from 852 to 851, Elijah is the prophet connected to him. Elijah. So put the name Elijah in the column to the far right side. Underneath him, Jehoram, Elisha is connected to him. Elisha. So put the name Elisha on the far right column. Also with Jehu, Elisha is connected with him as well. So that'll take us through the prophets who are connected to these kings. But now let's actually talk about what's happening with these two kingdoms. So Ahab is the king who is married to Jezebel. And Jezebel brings in, she's from Tyre, and she brings and introduces Baal worship, or what we might say Baal worship, into the northern kingdom of Israel. Which is not good at all. But essentially what happens is Jehoshaphat and Ahab decide that they want to try to bring their two kingdoms together. So basically what they do is they decide that Jehoshaphat's son, whose name is Jehoram or Joram, who comes right underneath him on the kings of Judah side, is going to marry their daughter named Athaliah. So Athaliah is the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. Athaliah is their daughter. So basically, that's an attempt to form an alliance, but it does not work well at all, because basically what ends up happening on the kings of Israel side is we have Ahab, his son Ahaziah also does evil in the eyes of the Lord. Ahab did some pretty bad things too, but basically Ahaziah follows the things that his father did. And Ahaziah, he worships Baal, he provokes God to anger, and he is the king who fell off lattice. And when he fell off the lattice, he died. Then that takes us to Jehoram on the kings of Israel side. He also does evil in the eyes of the Lord. And he got rid of the pillar of Baal that Ahab had established, but he clung to the sins of Jeroboam. So Jeroboam is the first king of Israel. So let's take a second and look over on the kings of Judah side. So we have Jehoshaphat and his son Jehoram or Joram, who marries Athaliah. So then that takes us to Ahaziah or Jehoahaz on the kings of Judah side. He is the son of Joram or Jehoram and Athaliah. He is closely connected with his uncle Jehoram on the kings of Israel side. So he loves his uncle Jehoram and wants to be with him, wants to hang out with him, all of those different types of things. So basically what ends up happening is Ahaziah or Athaliah decides that she wants to overtake the southern kingdom of Judah. So Athaliah, who comes after Ahaziah, she is the only queen who is in charge of the southern kingdom of Judah, and she is not from Judah. She is actually from Israel, and she temporarily serves as queen, but basically her goal is to overtake the southern kingdom of Judah. So she kills all of Ahaziah. So this is her son. She kills her son and all of his family, or at least she thinks all of his family. And she does that so that she can become queen. So then Jehu, over on the kings of Israel's side, and we already said that Elisha is connected to him, but there's also a family change connected to him. So Jehu was a leader in the army, and basically he assassinated everyone connected to Ahab. So his sons, leaders, close friends, and priests, he declares war on Baal worship, and he kills all of the followers of Jezebel who had introduced and who were worshiping foreign gods and goddesses. At the same time, he continued to foster the religious beliefs and practices and the shrines that were placed at Dan and at Bethel. So back to Athaliah, though. She had killed everyone in her son's family, except there was one son, one child, who was hidden that she thought was killed but was not killed. And that child's name was Joash or Jehoash. So Joash basically becomes king when he is 6 years old. So he is installed as king when he is 6 years old. Queen Athaliah, so his grandmother, she is slain. Excuse me. Joash is known mostly for destroying everything connected to Baal worship. He repaired the temple. He appointed officers over the temple, repaired damages to the temple, replenished the treasury at the temple. So he did a lot of good things. At the same time, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide for a second. At the same time, Syria, which is just north basically just north of where you see Aram. So in that area, that's where Syria is. Syria is growing in its strength, in its power, and it's wanting to come in and overtake both the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. So basically, the Syrians at this point in time, they had threatened an attack. And so Joash then takes some money from the treasury and pays him off. So this is an attempt to not get into a suzerainty vassal treaty just yet, but just to pay them off so that way they don't come in and attack. So that's what's happening on the kings of Judah side. On the kings of Israel side, that takes us to Jehoahaz. The prophet connected with him is Elisha. And he also followed in the same sins as Jeroboam. So again, we have this continuing issue, this continuing problem with people following in the same sins as Jeroboam. And he is defeated by the Syrians, which again, that's right where Aram is. So the Assyrians had come in, they attacked the northern kingdom of Israel, and they threatened the southern kingdom of Judah. But Joash pays the Syrians off so they won't come in and attack them. Okay, so then that takes us to Amaziah. We're going to go ahead and just keep this map up because there's going to be some different things that are happening now throughout the rest of this portion of the divided kingdom that we may need this map for. So Amaziah on the kings of Judah side, he started off really well, and then he decided that he wanted to attack the northern kingdom of Israel, and in doing so, he was killed in that particular attempt. That takes us to Joash on the kings of Israel side, So prophets connected to him are Elisha, Amos, and Hosea. Elisha, Amos, and Hosea. So those three names should go in the far right column. So this particular king is encouraged by Elisha to recover from that initial attack from the Syrians, from the Arameans. And so basically, Elisha asked him or commanded him to strike the ground. And so Jehoash struck the ground 3 times, and Elisha asks him, why didn't you do it 5 or 6 times? And the reason for that is because Elisha was basically saying that the kingdom of Israel, that they that they'd be able to fight and they might win a few times, but they're not going to win the entirety of the war. So they're not going to utterly destroy the Syrians. Okay, so then that takes us to Uzziah or Azariah on the kings of Judah side. Prophets connected to him are Amos, Hosea, and Isaiah. Hosea, Amos, and Isaiah. Some people call Isaiah. So you might hear either one of those terms. It's talking about the same prophet. So we'll talk about him, and we'll also talk about Jeroboam II on the kings of Israel side. Prophets connected to him are Amos, Hosea, and possibly Jonah. So prophets connected to Jeroboam II are Amos, Hosea, and Jonah. So let's actually talk about Jeroboam II first. So he basically saw the pinnacle of Israel's success. So when everything was going well, everything was going right, everything started turning around and looking up. All of those types of things happened under Jeroboam II's reign. And so this is really the last hurrah, the last season of glory before the northern kingdom of Israel falls to Assyria. And this is a map that you can see here, the Assyrian Empire. So Assyria is eventually going to come in and overtake them. So that's a little bit about Jeroboam II. If we go back to the kings of Judah side, to Joash or Jehoash. I'm sorry, that was the wrong king. There we go. Let's go over to Uzziah or Azariah on the kings of Judah side. It should be right across from Jeroboam II. So he serves as a vassal. So we have a suzerainty vassal covenant with Israel and Judah at this point in time. So Israel is a suzerain, Judah is the vassal. So Azariah or Uzziah serves as a vassal to the northern kingdom of Israel for about half of his reign. And eventually, later on in his life, he suffers from leprosy, and he has to live apart from everyone else, which is when his son, Jotham, comes in and serves as king in his stead. So Jotham then, he serves in the stead of his father, so kings of Judah side. He defeats the Philistines, the Ammonites, the Arabians. He completes building projects both inside and outside the capital city. At this point in time, the Assyrians and Syrians, or Arameans, so you see where Assyria is right in the middle of this map, and then also Aram, or where Syria is. Those two groups of people are fighting back and forth, trying to gain control and trying to gain power. And eventually, Assyria wins. So because Assyria wins, they enter into a suzerainty vassal covenant with the Syrians, which also means that the Assyrians overtake all of their territory and all of their land. So there's a lot of fighting going on between the Syrians and the Assyrians, or the Arameans and the Assyrians, and that is eventually going to affect and influence the northern kingdom of Israel. So, prophets connected to Jotham, who is on the kings of Judah side. Prophets are Hosea and Micah. If we go to the kings of Israel side, we see the name Zechariah. Now, Zechariah reigned for 6 months, and he continued in the sins of Jeroboam, so the initial king of the northern kingdom of Israel. That takes us to Shallum. Shallum attacked King Zechariah and assassinated him in front of the people, and he reigned for 1 month. So Shallum, if you go to the right-hand column, go ahead and put family change, because Shallum is not connected, not familially connected to Zechariah, so we have a family change with him. That takes us to Menahem on the northern kingdoms of Israel's side, and he attacked and assassinated King Shallum. So there's a family change with him as well. So there's a family change with Shallum and a family change with Menahem. Menahem is most known for killing a group of people from Tirzah who were living in a place called Tiphsah. And one of the things that he did, and this is horrible, absolutely horrible, is he ripped open all of the women who were pregnant. So basically, he ripped them open, killed their babies, all of those different types of things, which is absolutely horrific and horrible. So Menahem also paid off the Assyrians because he's trying to avoid getting into a suzerainty vassal covenant with them. He's trying to avoid them coming in and attacking and overtaking Israel. So he pays off the Assyrian king, whose name is Pul, P-U-L, and is doing that in hopes that Assyria will hold off on attacking them. That takes us to Pekahiah on the kings of Israel side, and he did evil in the eyes of the Lord. If we go to the next king on the kings of Israel side, we have Pekah. Pekah is the son of Remaliah, and so Remaliah was one of Pekahiah's officers, and so there is a family change here with Pekah. So there's a family change with him, and he is the son of one of Pekahiah's officers. And basically what he did was he conspired against Pekahiah and then killed him and everyone connected to his house. While he's in charge, the Assyrians, who are under the rule of Tiglath-Pileser III, he's the king of Assyria, they come in and do their initial attack over the northern kingdom of Israel and took some captives back to Assyria. So basically, what the Assyrians are wanting to do at this point is to completely overtake Israel and completely overtake Judah to serve as a buffer between Assyria and Egypt. So Egypt is still a world power at this point in time, and so both the Assyrians and whoever is over in the green area, so that would be Assyria at this point in time, both are wanting this particular land, this particular territory, and so that is a big issue. And what ends up happening with the northern kingdom of Israel with this particular attack, with this initial attack, is that some of the Assyrians stayed in Israel, and so the people started adopting different Assyrian practices, different customs, all of those different types of things, and the people did that in order to show loyalty to the Assyrians. So we're entering into a suzerainty vassal covenant, and it's likely that part of that covenant was that the people of Israel were going to have to adapt and adopt some Assyrian beliefs and practices. So that's what's happening on the kings of Israel side. On the kings of Judah side, we have Ahaz or Jehoahaz. Prophets connected to him are Hosea, Micah, and Isaiah or Isaiah. So Hosea, Micah, and Isaiah. So because of all of these things that are going on with Assyria, Ahaz basically asks for aid from Assyria because Egypt is closest to them. So Egypt is going to be coming in from the south. Assyria is going to be coming in from the north. And so basically the people of Judah ask for for Assyria to come and help them to fight against the Egyptians. And so, because of this, the people chose not to trust in God, and they chose to trust in the Assyrian government. And basically, that connects, or that ties the southern kingdom of Judah to the Assyrian Empire, and and so their autonomy is weakened. They are forced to forced into, you could say, a suzerainty vassal type of covenant, but since they're asking for help, they're entering into a suzerainty vassal covenant with the Assyrians. And so it's just really, really not a good situation at all, because they're obligated to pay extra, what we might call taxes or obligations, and their autonomy is completely weakened. And so that's not good at all. So then that takes us to Hosea on the kings of Israel side. And he is the last king of the northern kingdom of Israel. And there is a family change with him. So go ahead and put family change on the far right column. So with Hosea, he conspires against Pekah and assassinates him. He rules for a short amount of time. Now remember, they're already in a suzerainty vassal covenant with the Assyrians, but he decides that he wants to go behind the Assyrians' back and go to Egypt and try to enter into a suzerainty vassal covenant with the people of Egypt, which is a big no-no, because if the suzerainty vassal covenant is disregarded or annulled for any reason at all, that means that the suzerain can come in and do whatever it is that they want to that vassal. So Hosea tried to create a new suzerainty vassal covenant with the Egyptians, and that completely backfired on him, because the Assyrians found out about this, and basically the Assyrians then came in and completely destroyed Israel, took people as captives back to Assyria. They left some people there, and it's just a really, really messy situation. So you'll see on your notes that there's a section right under Hosea for the end of Israel, So I just want to talk through some of the things that are happening here. So initially, the northern kingdom of Israel is invaded by Assyria in 722 BC, and it's completely conquered and captured and demolished in 720 BC. So this is actually the second time that they've come in. The first time was more of a warning type of thing. This is when they actually came in, and then they captured everything. So Judah is completely traumatized by this event, completely traumatized, because they saw what happened, and they knew that if they weren't careful, they could be next. So one of the things that let's talk a little bit about the Assyrian Empire. So the capital of the Assyrian Empire is Nineveh, and you can see that on this map. So if you look at Assyria, go 3 cities just north of that, you should see Nineveh there. So this is the first multinational empire. They were a very militaristic society. So they were in modern terms, we might say terrorists. So they were like modern day terrorists when it came to fighting into war. So they were very, very brutal. They were very cruel. It was just a really, really, really bad situation. So what ended up happening then, when the Assyrians came in and they overtook, is they left some of the Assyrians in the northern kingdom of Israel again. And some of the people of Israel also stayed there. And basically what ended up happening was there was a combination of rape and intermarriage that happened between the Assyrians and the northern kingdom of Israel. And basically their offspring By the time we get to the New Testament, their offspring are called the Samaritans. So the Samaritans historically come back from this particular time period, and the sins of Israel doomed them from the start. And so it's believed, since the Old Testament is really written from the southern kingdom of Judah's perspective, it's really believed that the Samaritans are the result of sin. So from their perspective, so it's just a really, really horrible situation. So the kingdom of Israel, then, they are doomed from the start because of their location, because of their religious beliefs and practices that they changed when they established themselves as a nation, and also because of their leadership, because their leadership chose not to trust in God, chose not to lean on God for help. And so because of those things, it was completely doomed from the start. That takes us back to the kings of Judah side, and Hezekiah. So Hezekiah is known for tearing down the Asherah images. So there's still worship of other gods and goddesses going on, even in the southern kingdom of Judah. And because of this, because of what's happened with the Assyrians coming in and overtaking Israel, they're basically stuck because they've got Egypt just to the south of them, and they've got Assyria to the north of them. So there's no buffer zone now. They're right smack dab in the middle of these two, you could say, world superpowers. And so basically, prophets connected to Hezekiah are Hosea, Micah, and Isaiah. And they basically encourage him to trust in God and to lean into God and trust God to help him with things. And that's what he did. And so God miraculously delivered them from the Assyrians. The Assyrians came in to attack, and God completely he completely obliterated that opportunity for the Assyrians. He's also known for having 15 years added on to his life. Now, what's happening in this point in time, the Assyrians are focusing westward and also south, but the Babylonians, which, if you look on this map, if you look closer to the Persian Gulf, so on the you could say the lower right side of this map, if you go just up and north from there, you'll see Babylonia. So Babylon is starting to gain in prominence and power. So Assyria is looking to the west, and they're not even paying attention to what's happening with Babylon at this particular point in time. So Babylon is starting to rise in power and prestige, and things are going to happen with them in the very, very near future in this situation of the divided kingdom. So basically what ends up happening is Isaiah tells Hezekiah that the final ruin of Judah is going to come from the Babylonians. They're also called Chaldeans. So it's the final blow, the final destruction, the final overtake of the southern kingdom of Judah is going to come from the Chaldeans, from the Babylonians, not from the Assyrians. That takes us then to Manasseh on the kings of Judah side. He is taken captive to Babylon by the Assyrian king, and he is the absolute worst king in the line of David. He practiced idolatry, which back in the day, idolatry, that was the big sin that promoted and prompted a whole host of other sins. So he is the worst king in the line of David. He was a severe persecutor. He reigned for a long time, and some people say that he repented near the end of his life. Some people say that he did not. So anyway, Manasseh, long ruling king, did not do well at all. If we go back to the kings of Israel side, you'll see the date 662 BC. 662 BC. So this is when the Assyrians come in and they overtake Egypt. So where Memphis is on this map on the Mediterranean Sea, they take over Egypt and they rule there for about 10 years. That takes us to Ammon on the kings of Judah side. So he followed in the evil steps of his father, and he was overthrown in 2 years. So short reign for him. That takes us to Josiah. Prophets connected to Josiah are Zephaniah and possibly Nahum. So Zephaniah and possibly Nahum. So he is known for removing idolatry from the southern kingdom of Judah. He also removes mediums, spiritists, basically anyone or anything that goes against what God had asked for the people in regards to the Mosaic covenant. So his big thing was bringing the people back into observance of the Mosaic law. So both in observance and also in practice. And basically, he goes up to Bethel, so the southernmost kingdom or the southernmost city of the former kingdom of Israel, and he destroys the altar and he kills all of the prophets. But he himself is killed in a battle against the Egyptians. If you go to the kings of Israel side, you'll see a couple of more dates. 627 BC. This is when Ashurbanipal, the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal, he dies, and when he dies, the kingdom starts to fall apart. So then in 612 BC, this is when the Babylonians and also the Medes are, if you look on this map, just above the Persian Gulf where Elam is, you see the city Susa. That's where Persia is. The Medes, and so the Persians, the Medes and the Babylonians sack Nineveh. Nineveh is the capital city of Assyria. And when they overtake the capital city of an empire, that means that essentially that entire empire goes to them. So this is what the Babylonian Empire looked like. The Babylonian Empire. So basically, essentially, the Babylonians overtake the entirety of the Assyrian Empire. If we go back to the kings of Judah side, that takes us to Jehoahaz. Prophets connected to Jehoahaz are Jeremiah and Habakkuk. So he became king after his father, but he was quickly removed by the Egyptian king who's named Pharaoh, and he's named Pharaoh Necho. And so he is replaced by his brother Jehoiakim. So he is Jehoahaz's brother, and he is placed in that position by the Egyptian pharaoh named Necho. Prophets connected to Jehoiakim are Jeremiah and Habakkuk. So he is given that position by the Egyptians. And basically during his particular reign, this is where the Babylonians start taking over more territory. So they've already overcome Assyria, and they're starting to take over even more area and more territory. So then that takes us to Jehoiakim with an N. Prophets connected to him are Jeremiah and Ezekiel and possibly Habakkuk. So he reigns for 3 months, and then he was deported to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar. So Nebuchadnezzar is in charge of Babylon by this point in time. And then after he had died, after Nebuchadnezzar had died, the next Babylonian king, Evil-Merodach, he released him from captivity. And then that takes us to Zedekiah. Zedekiah is the last king of the southern kingdom of Judah. The prophets connected to him are both Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. So Zedekiah is the last of David's line to serve as king. He had made an oath to Babylon, so he entered into a suzerainty vassal covenant with Babylon, and then he disregarded it because he had gone to the Egyptians and he had asked them for help, and basically he asked the Egyptians for help in fighting against the Babylonians, even though the southern kingdom of Judah was in a suzerainty vassal covenant with the Babylonians. So obviously Babylon finds out about this, and they come in and they completely demolish really the entirety of the southern kingdom of Judah. They destroy Jerusalem. They destroy the temple. They do all different kinds of things. So Zedekiah, King Zedekiah, he flees when this happens, and he's captured. And this is going to be a bit graphic for a second. So when he's captured, and then he's forced to watch all of his sons be executed, and then his eyes are gouged out. So the very last thing that he sees is his sons being executed before his eyes. So everyone who's captured is sent into Babylon. Some people do flee to Egypt, and Jeremiah is one of the people who flees to Egypt. So this is a little bit about the history and about the different things that happen with the divided kingdom.